Coming up today, a Chinese delegation will attend North Korea's upcoming ceremony in Pyongyang, marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of its Workers' Party. Will they have a message from Beijing over the North's planned rocket launch? As Russia intensifies its airstrikes against targets in Syria, Syria's president says Russia and its allies, not the US, are the ones achieving practical results against Islamic State. Plus, the Korean government launches its own probe into the Volkswagen emissions scandal. Lawmakers are also set to sharply increase penalties for violations of car safety and clean air standards. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, October 5th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, a senior delegation of Chinese officials will attend a ceremony in Pyongyang this week to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of North Korea's Workers' Party. The North State-run Korean Central News Agency says the Chinese delegation, headed by Ryu Win-san, member of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of China's Communist Party, will be guests at Saturday's ceremony. There are mounting concerns North Korea might try to mark the anniversary with actions viewed as provocations by the international community. Experts say the most likely is a rocket launch, but a possible fourth nuclear test has not been discounted. Watchers say the Chinese delegation could be carrying a message from Beijing. China has joined international calls for North Korea to refrain from taking actions which could escalate tensions. And with tension bubbling over the North's possible rocket launch, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency will be in Seoul for a two-day visit starting on Tuesday. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Seoul says Yukiya Amano will meet with Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. On the agenda is North Korea's nuclear threat, the Iran nuclear deal, and how South Korea and the IAEA should work together going forward. The nuclear watchdog adopted a resolution last month calling on North Korea to follow the denuclearization agreement it first signed in 2005, known as the Joint Statement. The nominee to be South Korea's next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says South Korea has strengthened its surveillance alert level amid possible military provocations from North Korea later this month. Ahead of his hearing at the National Assembly's National Defense Committee on Monday, Army General Lee Sun-jin said in a statement that a provocation will likely happen sometime between October 10th and the end of November. He said the type of provocation could range from a fourth nuclear test, launching a long-range rocket, to attempting to attack a South Korean warship. The nominee stressed that Seoul will block any attack from the north by monitoring its moves through the South Korea-US combined surveillance platform. Staying with all things inter-Korean related, and South and North Korea are set to exchange the final lists of people who have been selected to take part in reunions for war-separated families later this month. But North Korea's plans for a long-range rocket launch could really jeopardize the highly anticipated event. Kwon Chang-oh reports.
Plans for an upcoming round of reunions of families separated by the Korean War are carrying on as scheduled. Efforts to locate the 400 potential reunion candidates from both South and North Korea, 200 from each side, are being completed on Sunday, and the lists of names will be exchanged on Monday. Then a final 100 candidates from each side will be chosen, and those lists will be exchanged on Thursday. Preparations are also well underway at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea, where the reunion event will be taking place. But current relations between the two Koreas are under intense strain yet again, putting the reunions at risk. The main sticking point is a rocket that the North has indicated it will launch to mark the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party next Saturday. North Korean authorities claim the rocket launch is to put a satellite into orbit. But United Nations resolutions ban any launch using ballistic missile technology. So even if the North doesn't go ahead with the launch, the existing resolutions have already raised tensions with Pyongyang.
Once UN Security Council resolutions were imposed, South Korea's relations with the North were strained even further. The deterioration of inter-Korean relations was an unavoidable consequence.
North Korea has also been criticizing South Korea on other issues, taking particular offense at President Park Geun-hye's address to the UN General Assembly last week, in which she condemned the North's continued push towards nuclear weapons development.
If this kind of confrontational rhetoric continues, everyone is in agreement that this whole deal could fall apart.
Although the reunion event is just over 2 weeks away, it still seems unclear whether it'll go forward, making it less certain that the separated families will be able to see each other again. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, Russian fighter jets are intensifying their bombardment of targets inside Syria. Russia's defense ministry says the Russian Air Force carried out 20 flights targeting 10 Islamic State positions in Idlib province over the weekend. The strikes reportedly hit a terrorist training camp, including a suicide belt factory. It's not known how many terrorists have been killed in those strikes, but Russia says they have considerably reduced the combat potential of militants. Russia is carrying out military action in Syria in support of President Bashar al-Assad. In an interview with Iranian state TV on Sunday, President Assad said the coalition of Iran, Russia, Syria and Iraq must prevail, otherwise the world will see the destruction of the entire Middle East. He also said the international coalition led by the US to try and defeat Islamic State had actually made the situation in Syria worse. Back here in Korea, and the country is planning to raise its penalties for violations on car safety and clean air standards by as much as tenfold in the wake of the emissions rigging scandal surrounding Volkswagen. Lawmakers say a revised bill on the Automobile Management Act will be tabled during a plenary session at the National Assembly. The bill aims to raise the penalty from the current 1 billion won, or roughly $845,000 to $8.45 million. The bill is expected to pass as there is growing criticism the current limit is too low and not effective. The bill was submitted last year when Hyundai's Santa Fe and SsangYong's Corando Sport were reported to have inflated efficiency ratings. The penalty on environmental standard violation is also expected to rise by the same amount. A revised bill on the Clean Air Conservation Act will be motioned this week to raise the fine tenfold to just under $8.5 million. And on a related note, the Korean government has launched its own probe into imported Volkswagen cars. That will include testing for types of emissions rigging software other than the kind discovered by authorities in the United States. The Ministry of Environment and Industry experts suspect older models of the Volkswagen Tiguan and Golf could be using a different device to cheat emissions standard tests. Authorities say if that's proven true, separate sanctions and penalties will be imposed. Meanwhile, hundreds of people in Korea are expected to join a class action lawsuit against the German automaker in the coming weeks. 2 people filed suit with the Seoul Central District Court last Wednesday. The law firm representing the plaintiffs said it has received over 500 inquiries since then, and over 100 people have submitted documents to join the suit. Now, the Korean economy has seen its growth rate veer up and down over the past year, but as our Shin Se-min reports, it could bounce back in the third quarter.
Korea's economic growth rate has gone through massive fluctuations every quarter since the first quarter of last year. After sliding from 1.1% in first quarter of last year, the figure has remained in the 0% range for 5 straight quarters now. Market watchers say the fluctuations are likely to continue as they're predicting a rebound in the domestic economy in the third quarter of this year. Korea's industrial output rose 0.5% in August from a month earlier, the third month of growth. Retail sales, a key figure that gauges domestic consumption, inched up 1.9% during the same period, the second straight month of growth. Finance Ministry data also reflects an increase in investment. Investment in construction and facilities and equipment went up 3.5% and 5.7% in August. Despite the improved domestic data, exports are still on a downward slide, casting a long shadow over the export-reliant country. Outbound shipments continue to drop in September for a 9th straight month, down 8.3% from the same month last year. Experts say Korea's outbound shipments are likely to pick up slightly in October and November. Still, with the global trade volume continuing to dwindle due to slowing demand, the country's export outlook looks dim. One bright spot on the horizon may be the government's 2-week-long Black Friday event, created to mimic the North American holiday shopping season and the accompanying boost in sales. The Korean government says it is positive that the economy will grow to a rate of over 1% in the 2 remaining quarters of the year on a pickup in consumer spending thanks to the Chuseok holiday and a recent cut in the consumption tax. 신세민, Arirang News.
And as we just heard there, Korea's 2-week Black Friday event already seems to be paying off for the country's major retailers. That's based on the first 3 days of sales recorded by the retailers, which have posted sales figures more than 20% higher than the same shopping period last year. Lotte department store says it saw a 23% increase in sales in the first 3 days of the month. Hyundai department store sales rose 27.5%. The retail giants say the fashion industry has been leading the sales growth. Now, China's National Day holiday, which falls right in the middle of the Black Friday period, is also expected to continue boosting spending. The event began last Thursday and runs through next Wednesday, October 14th. A special Hanbok exhibition is being held at the Presidential Museum of Cheongwade, Sarangche. The event shows how Korea's traditional garments have changed over time, reflecting the country's historical traditions as well. Won Ji-yeon tells us more.
White hanboks like these express resistance against Japanese rule during its occupation of Korea in early 20th century. But once Korea gained independence in 1945, the country's traditional attires began to change in terms of their design, colors, and function. For instance, these old movies show that cheaper fabrics like nylon and velvet were used to make hanbok during the 60s, when Korea was suffering from poverty after the war. And as the nation became more influenced by Western cultures, fusion-style wedding hanboks were made for brides and grooms. You can see all of these different hanbok designs and more at a special hanbok exhibition at the Cheongwade Sarangche in central Seoul. The event was organized by the Hanbok Advancement Center to commemorate the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation. Organizers say the event will attract a lot of visitors, both domestic and from abroad, because hanbok is now more than just a tradition.
Lately, I've seen a lot of young people dressed in hanbok in the streets. When I ask them about the reason for wearing hanbok, they say it's simply because they like it. This tells me that hanbok has a new meaning in our society.
The exhibition that highlights the changing designs and values of hanbok will last until November 1st. Won Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, lots of wild plants in Korea are on the verge of extinction due to reckless gathering by people looking for a souvenir from their hiking or camping trip. Fortunately, the Korea National Park Service is restoring some of these plants to their natural habitats, and it's already seeing results. Park Se-young reports.
On these cliffs high above Hanwha Maritime National Park, people are working hard to restore the Neophanesia fulcata. This is a kind of orchid, and it's one of the most endangered plant species in the country. The crew plants the seedlings with great care so their roots can settle safely between the rocks. The plants have gradually disappeared due to human activity, with many people picking them for decorative purposes. Fortunately, a crop was found 3 years ago at this park in Gyeongsangnam-do Province, and the Korea National Park Service was able to cultivate and plant roughly 500 new seeds. The seeds have had an 87% survival rate despite a drought and a series of typhoons that hit Korea this year.
It's difficult to create new populations of this orchid species. We used a tissue culture method to cultivate about 3,000 seeds.
Similar methods were used to cultivate the seeds of other plants, and the seeds were planted in their natural habitats to increase their chances of survival. The project is part of a larger one by the Park Service to restore endangered plants. Korea's national parks are home to over half of the 77 endangered plant species in the country, including another fragrant orchid called the Dendrobium moniliforme. It's often gathered for decorative and medical purposes, and it too is endangered. But over the past year, the Park Service has cultivated over 2,000 seedlings and planted them between rocks and tied them to tree branches at Wolchesan National Park in Jeollanam-do Province. The Siberian lily, which is now found in just 4 regions in Korea, has also been restored at Mount Ode in Gangwon-do Province. With its recent success, the Park Service is hoping to restore more plant species to locations around the country and place a stronger ban on the gathering of endangered plants. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for you on this Monday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Have a great start to the week and thank you as always for tuning in. Goodbye.